At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Dr. Sue, and I'm going to call you Dr. Sue.
Oh, that's awesome, Dr. Doug.
Great to have you on the show. I know.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be here. I love your purpose, your mission. I love it all. I'm honored to be here with you. Thank you.
Well, and I thank you. What I find interesting for the audience is to understand what your background is and what journey brought you to this point where you're doing what you're doing now, because it's certainly different than what you initially started to do.
Yes. So I am a medical doctor, MD, trained physician who, I'm a pediatrician, a pediatric physician. But from the get-go, Dr. Doug, I was a little out of the box anyhow, because I went through the traditional training and I stayed on an extra year as the chief resident, which was a great year to kind of expand myself as a teacher and a leader, and also to really get clear about what I wanted to be in the world. And I really realized that I wanted to do this kind of holistic thing. I had taken an elective fourth year in med school, and that was even divine, because I would have never taken this elective in alternative medicine unless my friend who was taking an elective I was taking an elective in pediatric neurosurgery, of all things, because I really admired this woman neurosurgeon. She's the first African-American neurosurgeon. I mean, she's just like one of those people, people mistook her for the janitor. She was so humble with her patients. And I was just like, I just want to be around her. I just want to learn from her. Her name is Alexis Kennedy. And so I said, okay, I said to my friend, okay, I'll do this alternative medicine rotation with you. And how about you do this pediatric neurosurgery one with me? And he said, okay. And you know what's so wild, Dr. Doug? I became an alternative medicine practitioner. He became a neurosurgeon. Can you believe that? Which is not a small feat, becoming a neurosurgeon, right?
Yeah.
And so I love how our paths just crossed, and like he seeded something for me that I was never even thinking about, and I seeded something for him. And that to me is just like such a beautiful gift. So yeah, I started out in traditional pediatrics, and from the get-go, I decided to launch my own pediatric practice, primarily because I just didn't see myself fitting into the traditional medicine paradigm. I saw a lot of kids falling through the cracks of the standard medicine. I think it's amazing what we did. My favorite place, was in the ICU, actually, because I thought that's just so powerful how we help these kids who are on death's doorstep, just close the drain and, pop them back up, and they're walking back out the door. It's just amazing, miraculous. And I also saw kids who just continuously kind of circled through the emergency room door. We'd patch them up and send them home, and then back again they would come. And so I really gained that perspective as a chief resident. And so I decided to really, commit and just jump 2 feet in. So off I went to the races in my own practice. And in medicine, and unlike in dentistry, I feel like you guys are trained how to run a practice, right? Like business is part of your training.
Not really. At
No?
least it wasn't back then. I don't know about it now, but it wasn't then.
I don't know about it now either, because I'm in my 23rd year of practice. But we were not trained in how to, run a business, right? And I remember like in the very beginnings being like, I think I was applying for something, or, it's like you fill out all this paperwork and all this stuff you don't know how to do. And I just had this like real moment of like, I can't do this. And then I just heard this very powerful voice outside of me being like, yes, you can. Like, just let's go. Right. So I did it. And I just feel like how I evolved from pediatric physician focusing on nutrition for kids to now working with women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s as a transformation expert, like a life coach. I feel like the real way that I got here is kept following the breadcrumbs and it didn't really make a lot of sense a lot of the time. Like there's so many times my husband's like, okay, I still believe, but how is this all coming together? Because it was all over the map. Like I actually created 4 different types of ways, 4 different businesses to serve women. And none of them were really kind of meeting the mark. Either I thought it was great and they were like, no, thank you. Or they wanted this. And I was like, nope, don't want to do that. And so I finally just put it down. I finally just said, God, I don't know. I've really worked at this, for years and years, probably at that time by like 15 years into trying to figure out how to serve women. And I just put the whole thing down. I was like, okay, I'm going to just semi-retire. I'm going to finish out this pediatric gig and then, have fun with my husband and my expanding family because we have 3 daughters who are teens and young adults. And it was within a few weeks, if not a few months of saying, I'm done, that I got another breadcrumb and I followed it. And within, next thing I knew, I was in a 3-day seminar. Next thing I knew, I was in a year-long program. Next thing you know, I'm a coach and I'm coaching women. And it's been amazing. Like I really felt like, wow, I hit my second calling. My pediatric calling is definitely my first. I love children and my purpose with women is still with children. Like I really love teaching these, mindset, emotional mastery, skill sets and frameworks for women so that the ripple effect is to their children and their grandchildren.
Well, and that's amazing. And you know what caused me to smile when you were talking about that is, I just finished an interview, and one of the things you were talking about is stillness. And one of the quotes we used was, be still. And then depending on your theological background, but be still. And it's like when you finally became still, it came to you,
Yeah.
which I find so fascinating. Now, and I know this is not the topic we're going to talk about, but I'm curious with the nutritional focus with children
Yeah.
on pediatrics. Have you found that has made such a difference in their health?
Oh, wow. Absolutely. I'm still blown away to this day, and I've been doing it for 23 years, and I'm still amazed. Like, wow, you take gluten out of the diet or dairy out of the diet, or, and it's just like, huh? Like that happens? I mean, the way that I see it, I really help them kind of get the plan. This is your best anti-inflammatory diet. These are the key nutrients you're low in. And then I set them on a plan. And it's the parents who do the work, right? With
Yeah.
patience and persistence and daily consistency, which is the hardest of it all. And they get results. I'm just amazed, truly, truly amazed. Yeah.
Well, and that's so cool. So it's interesting because I noticed in your bio that you thought about becoming a psychiatrist, and, and what I find funny is when I was in pre-dent, I actually only was in undergrad for 3 years. I got accepted a year early into
Oh,
dental school,
wow.
but
Uh-huh.
I was at the point where I was almost completely out of money, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, you know what? I really enjoy psychology. And I
Yes.
thought, okay, if I'm going to apply to one dental school, if I get in, I'm going to school after 3 years. If not, I'm going to change my major. Well, I got accepted to Northwestern, and the rest is history. But it's interesting how ultimately you end up in another area. For me, same as you, coaching people, working with people,
Yeah.
transformational type of stuff. So I find that
It's
curious.
kind of like I became my own type of psychiatrist, quote unquote.
Exactly.
you know, I became the practical psychologist in a way. Because what happened was, it's true. I love psychology. I love human behavior. I've always loved it. I've read self-development books even in my teens and young adult. And then I majored in biopsych because I was like, how do I get this pre-med thing done, but really focus more on human behavior than any hard science?
Well, and
And
it's great.
yeah, because I was like, why do I want to be this medical doctor anyhow? Because I don't really like, that's not my passion. My passion isn't science. My passion is human behavior. My passion is helping. My passion is like relationships, like being of service. And so, yeah, I once I got to my psych rotation, I I was just like, wow, this is not what I thought it was going to be, and I don't know what it is now, but my experience of it then was this is a lot of medical management. Like I
Yeah.
really felt like I didn't know how I would be of best service there, basically. And I've always loved kids. So yeah, now I feel like, wow, this is coming full circle. I get to do, human behavior and therapy through, coaching.
Well, and what's interesting is here you are an MD, and yet you're doing the life coaching, you're doing that type of thing. And in my opinion, probably all the studying you've done, all the extracurricular stuff that you've done to get your certifications, whatever, is just as important and as good as having gone to medical school.
Oh,
And
thank you so
I found that
much,
to be
Dr.
true.
Doug.
It's true.
That is so nice.
Once you've
I
been through
really
it,
I can really, if you're listening to this, like my eyes are actually tearing up because I've carried like so much shame around like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Right. And maybe some listeners have felt that way too. Like when you're taking this really strange, fascinating, extraordinary path, a lot of times, and you're not following what everybody else is doing, the common thing is to say, what's wrong with me? Like, why
yeah.
can't I just fit into the box? And so for you to say that really validates to me, like, it is worth it. It is extraordinary. It is exceptional. I have learned a lot, and really being able to put all the different frameworks, together, and also know when I'm not able to help someone, when they're clearly fitting into another box, I
Yeah.
think is so, I'm really grateful for that.
Well, and I think it's important for the audience. I know when I first moved to Utah, and I decided I was also doing small business coaching at that time. But then I thought, well, I'll do a little bit of personal life coaching also. And I found that they were a dime a dozen. I was in a bunch of networking groups, and it's like, holy cow. And the reason I said this to you is because I think your experience, I know it was true for me too. My experience in dental school, I mean, medical school, dental school, it was not easy.
No,
You really had to work hard. You had to understand how to be curious and learn and so forth. And then all of a sudden, moving into an entirely different area, you apply those same rigors that you learned
yeah,
in graduate school and apply that, and all of a sudden you are at the level of an MD in your own area now, only there is no degree there. It's just a
that's so
certification.
interesting you say that, Dr. Doug, because working in this area, I've often gotten the feedback like, wow, Sue, you really manifest a lot in a short period of time. And now, meaning like when I say I'm going to do something, like there it is, I've done it.
Yeah.
And And now that you're saying that, what I'm realizing is that training as a medical doctor really is so rigorous that I probably learned a lot of skill sets there about how to get her done, get her
Absolutely,
done.
absolutely. So, question, soulful meditation. Where did you come up with that name?
Oh, soulful medicine, soulful medicine.
Soulful medicine. I'm sorry.
No, that's
Meditation
okay.
is on my mind. Soulful
Yeah,
medicine.
soulful medicine. It was an evolution actually through a lot of writing and journaling. And I was creating a quiz, which the quiz is on my website now.
I took it.
And oh, what did you get? What did you
I'll
get?
tell you later.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to hear what Dr. Doug got. There are men who take my quiz and they're so sweet, Doug, because usually they're like men in their 70s or so, and they're just following along and they'll hit reply and be like, Sue, this is amazing. I'm like so glad you're here. So nice. It's very comforting. Yeah, so soulful medicine, it was just an evolution. I'm like, oh, that's what I'm really up to. Like I was really trying to figure out what is this quiz delivering, and I came up with the name of soulful medicine. And we call it your soulful medicine cabinet now. My library of resources is called your soulful medicine cabinet, which I'm like, that's such a great play for a medical doctor. Your medicine cabinet is soulful. But soulful medicine to me is not all rainbows and unicorns. Like soulful medicine is anything that sculpts your soul or fills your soul. So soulful medicine feels good, when it's expanding you, it feels joyful. It's things that bring you happiness and pleasure. Soulful medicine also can be sculpting your soul. Like my miscarriages, is soulful medicine because what was happening through that fascinating package of loss and multiple loss over and over again, I learned something amazing. First, my soul grew incredible empathy for loss and how to sit with other people in loss, right? When you've lost life over and over again. And also though, I actually learned a real practical thing in medicine that I've applied to hundreds, if not thousands of children in my practice, that had I not gone through that, I would have not learned that to be able to pass it on. So I feel like soulful medicine also grows you so that then you can turn around and be of service to another as well.
Okay, so you talk about loss. Explain, if you don't mind being a little bit
Yeah.
transparent here, explain what were the losses that you experienced, because obviously that has helped you to get where you are
Yes.
today.
So the major loss that I've experienced in my life are losing babies. And that process happened like I never expected it, right? Like you're a newlywed, we're newly married, we're pregnant. I'm like, yeah, we're having a baby. Like here starts our family. And unfortunately, we lost that first baby. And so I wasn't expecting that. So that was super traumatic. And also though, then I then, we would get pregnant again and then we would lose the baby again.
Wow.
And then it actually happened a third time, like we pregnant and then we lost it. And I felt like, first of all, I was really pissed at God. I was like, so pissed. I was like, wait a minute. I started starting to like pointing fingers, like that actually matters. I was so pissed. I was like, I've devoted my life to kids. I want to be a mom. I've always wanted to be a mom, and these babies were just slipping through my fingers. But I had a very vivid dream. I had a series of vivid dreams. And when I saw the first one come true, I knew the second one was true too. And the third one is still en route. I don't know. It's in this dream from like series of dreams from, well, my oldest is about to turn 21. So this is from 20 plus years ago, but I had a series of very powerful dreams. And the first dream, was something that would happen to a friend. And she called me the next day and told me it happened. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's real.
Wow.
And it was really out of the box. Like this was like, how is this even possible? And it happened. So it's like, okay, listen to this dream. The second dream was, I was a patient, Doug. I was a patient in this dream. I was in one of those robes, the open front robe.
Right.
And I was in kind of like a setting with an open room with a bunch of patients in it. And the nurses, knowing that I was a doctor, asked me to get up. And they took me from bedside to bedside and were showing me the labs that, that show that you're, clotting labs, basically, right? These labs, they kept on showing me PT, PTT, PT, PTT, PT, PTT, right? And I was like, I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm clotting off these babies. I need to start on a baby aspirin. That's literally what I came up with. And I didn't know the science behind what was happening or why I was clotting off these babies. But I knew that I needed to start on a baby aspirin that day. And I did. I started on a baby aspirin. I also got a lot of other support, from medical doctor, acupuncturist, slapping on the hormones. So I did a lot of things, it wasn't just that. And also I later learned that the physiological problem that I was having is something that's passed on through generation and can affect all sorts of bodily systems, not just clotting, cardiovascular, and, in my case, miscarriages. Mm-hmm. It can translate to all these other problems. And I see a lot of them in kids, and now I'm able to help them. So I didn't even know what was going on, but that powerful dream, I was like, boom, I get to, do this. And lo and behold, our oldest came. She's right there. And really, to me, like the whole lesson of that loss is believe, because this craziest thing is that even though I had loss after loss, it was like with each loss, I was like, ooh, I'm almost there. Like, ooh, I believe this is really going to happen. And my OB-GYN, one of my besties from college is an, women's health doctor. She said, Sue, listen, you're halfway there. Like the hardest part can be just like getting it planted, right? Like getting pregnant is half of the battle, right? So I had a lot of encouragement, and finally our oldest came. So
Is
the
it?
second, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, isn't it amazing when we experience these losses, how, as
Mm,
you say, the initial reaction is, I hate God,
yes.
and or is he even there? And then ultimately, with awareness and mindfulness, you look back at that and realize, you know what? That was a lesson that has brought me to this point that now I'm able to pass on to others.
Others.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thousand
And
percent.
And I think so often people, if they could just understand when they're going through that, because we all do go through all those type of things, that
Yeah.
that there's a reason behind it. If we look for the gratitude rather than the victimhood, that ultimately we can see where it has given us value to be able to touch the lives of others, which I think is
Yeah.
fascinating. So as you're
The
working with women 40, 50, and 60, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead and finish your
Oh, well, I
thought.
want to say the other loss I experienced was a second trimester loss, which really felt something very different because at that point, like I delivered the baby at home. We went to the hospital. The baby didn't come home with us from the hospital, right? So it was a very different loss. And I think the lessons from that I learned about, how we grieve differently. Like my husband grieved very differently than I did,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know. Um, so appreciating that, appreciating like the nurses there were like angels. I was like, oh my gosh, they treated this baby like she was alive. And so I gave me such appreciation for hospitals in the medical setting and people treating others with such care. And, it gave me a big belief in the divine timing of everything because the day I lost that baby, I was the due date for our middle child, the one who came after this. And so
Wow.
I was like, whoa, like how did that happen?
Yeah, that gets fascinating. So,
That gets fascinating.
yeah,
So those are the lessons from that.
well, when you're working with women now in their 40s, 50s, and 60s for the most part,
Hmm.
what do you find the biggest challenge is that they're facing? Is there some common themes that come with that you find, all right, here are 4 to 5 things that I'm constantly facing with these women,
Hmm.
or these women are facing?
Well, I think the biggest umbrella is change. That's what they're
Mhm.
facing is change. And how that change shows up can show up in all different ways. I mean, change can show up in I've been divorced for a decade and I still haven't dated. There's someone who's stuck, right?
Right.
Um, or change can happen in I've been married to this person and I actually don't like, this is not healthy for me, for our kids, or for anyone, you know?
Yeah.
So definitely relationships, but also relationships in terms of like, wow, we've been married and we really do love each other, but we're like, we need a little zip back, like where's our spark, especially when the kids are gone and you're looking at each other like, who are you? Right? You've been both also focused on the kids. And there's definitely relationships in terms of kids, right? So now that our young adults, and maybe the young adults coming back and moving in the house, right? And he wants to be independent, but yet you're like, dude, you're not independent because you're living in our house,
Right.
right? So there's definitely relationships under the change umbrella. There's obviously physiological changes as well. And I don't do, hormone therapy or any of the medicine type component, but I do help women feel through the emotional process of that. I kind of think of it like second adolescence, where, first adolescence is like hormones. Everybody's been through that. Like you feel awkward, your body's changing. All of a sudden you're emotional where you maybe weren't before. Like you just feel really unsettled, right? And your identity is changing. So a lot of these women are maybe winding down their first career and thinking about starting a passion project, or maybe figuring out, well, who am I if I'm not the mom? Like these kids don't really need me anymore. Now, what am I? Like, what's my purpose now? That makes sense.
Do you find that there's a different mental culture between those women who are still married and happy
Yes.
versus those that have gotten divorced and are now single or whatever that happens to be? Do you find that there's a difference in mentality and emotional direction with that?
Mm. I think what I see mostly, because I believe like all relationships are sacred. They're all teachers, right? And it's just like when does the sacred contract end? You know, and are you just hanging on when you should have like parted ways, right? I actually don't think of them as much different. What I do see is patterns, you know, patterns of codependency, patterns of overgiving or people pleasing. Yeah, and patterns of like mixed boundaries. Usually what happens is in the first phase of relationship, if a relationship go through 4 phases in a lifetime, in the first phase, these relationships that are not, they're stuck. They haven't moved beyond like, you know, after the romance fizzled, right? And all of a sudden you're like, ooh, you're human too? Dang, I thought you were my knight in shining armor. You were perfect. Turns out you're imperfect, I'm imperfect. And then what happens is we have a power struggle, and power struggles are actually really healthy. Like my husband and I have power struggles. They're fun, they're playful, right? When you're dynamic and shifting, it feels good. It feels like stabilizing for everyone. But what happens is a lot of these women who are in these relationships that are either, you know, want to not healthy, want to leave or stuck, is that they're stuck in a power struggle. And you can be stuck in a power struggle even after divorce.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and your quiz was interesting, and I will say to my own defense, because when it came up with the answer is like, but when I went through that, I'm going, you know what, these really are focused on women. The questions really were,
Yes.
and I tried to answer some of them. How would I think? And others are like, all right, this is it. But I realized that, you know. You call them mamas. So what are the 3 or what are the 4 or the 5 different categories?
I call them mamas, and that doesn't mean you have to have birthed the child. A mama is a wise midlife woman, a wise woman in her 40s, 50s, or 60s,
Yeah.
right? And so the 4 different types are visionary, inspirational, giver, and detail. And the visionary mama, and this, by the way, is like following the DISC profile, which if you ever taken, you know, a personality assessment.
I am certified in the advanced disc. And
Okay, Doug.
that's why I was curious, because I'm looking at that going, okay, that's not the results for me would have been that I was kind of a S.
Doug is not liking his results.
And that's not me.
Hey, Doug, though, I think it is you now, actually. Like an S is you right now. An S in this is like a giver. Okay, so let's go through the 4 types.
Yeah.
Okay, the first type is, by the way, when you're doing personality, the reality is that we all have all of these. It's just that our majority we kind of hang out in one area or 2 areas more than the others. So we all have all of these in us. And the idea is that each one of it has its gifts, and usually with the gift, you got the greatest downfall of it. So let's go through them. So visionary mamas are like, you know, they're like the Beyoncés of the world. I'm going to talk in female language, Doug.
Go ahead.
They're like the Beyoncés of the world. They're like, twirl on them haters, you know, like they're like Gwyneth Paltrow. They're just like owning it. Like, here I am in all my glory. You don't like it? Too bad. You know, like this is where I'm going. And we all look at them like we like bow down to them. We're like, whoa, how'd she do that? You know? And so that's the upside of her, like the visionary mama, very confident, very visionary, very knows where she's going. The downfall of she can bowl people over in the way.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
she trashes relationships because she's so on her vision, you know, and not consciously. We're not like consciously doing this. This is all like subconscious patterns of like, not for her, like vulnerability feels like a weakness. Vulnerability is actually where we connect through vulnerability. So relationships can be a real challenge for the visionary mama. Inspirational mamas are the sparkly souls of the universe. They're everything's, you know, shiny. Like my nickname is like Sunshine Susie, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just like you're sparkly, you're fun, you're always looking for the positive. People come to you because they want to hear the upside of something crappy going on, and you've got it, you know. The downside of the visionary mama is she follows a lot of sparkles. So like distraction. It diffuses her energy. Instead of moving forward, she can just be spinning around all these shiny things, in essence.
And for men, if you're married to that, they talk a lot.
They do talk a lot. They do talk a lot. They love to talk. They're chatters. Yes. Like, we like to talk. Like, tell me about your day. How's it going?
Yeah.
And so then the giver mamas are what they sound like. Giving is as easy as breathing to them. They're the people who you want to come to and they just give you a warm hug. They don't have to say a lot. They're great, phenomenal listeners. They do not have to be center stage whatsoever. They're happy to just be present in the room and give you the love that you need. And their downfall, though, is they can become doormats. They overgive.
And codependent.
Yeah. And codependent is a big one. So I work with a lot of giver mamas.
Okay.
And then the last one is the detail mama. And she is the one who's got all the flipping spreadsheets. She's the organizer. She's the one who comes down. I always say the divine is in the details. She's like organizing the carpool. She's organizing the next trip. She's organizing your closet. She'd come over and organize your refrigerator happily. She's just very organized. The problem is regimented. The problem is that if she's so regimented, her life can get a little dry. Like, she needs some spark. She needs some fun, So so Doug is not happy because it sounds like he got a giver mama.
But I'll tell you why. Because again, I do this, and it's obviously I'm actually what you would call a visionary detail. So I'm a DC. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
But with the one that I use, which goes well beyond just the standard disc.
Yeah.
They get into values, motivators, all of that type of thing.
Yeah.
With the company that I got trained
in. Yeah.
And for me, my motivator then is that spiritual, that giving, that type of thing. So what I have found oftentimes is, in fact, it was fun. I took Tony Robbins. Here goes my curiosity, but I'm going, okay, I've done this once, so I know where I'm at, because it gets into the whole innate personality, your social personality, who you think you should be, and then you get into your conscious personality. So anyway, I did that. And when I did it with Tony Robbins, I found, you know what? That's my social personality. That's who I think I should be. That's what they came up with. And so I find it interesting that when I was answering those questions, I was answering it more of values than I was the other thing. And that's why beautiful. I came in. I think that's why I came in as a giving mama. Because
what I love though too is because people, when I do this, they're like, wait a minute. And so, like, for me, I would say in general, like, I'm inspirational giver. My giver comes out most with my family, my patients, my clients, right? Yeah. In general, like, I'm always really positive. I can sometimes be like, people are just like, how can you be that, right? So maybe out to the world, I am that. In my business, obviously, I need to pull in some visionary, right? Otherwise, I'm not going anywhere. Right. So I do think, and like, my lowest is detail, but I surround myself and I hire detail. So to me, like, using a quiz like this, or even advanced ones like Dr. Doug uses, is like, knowing your strengths, illuminates your weaknesses, and then you can hire them, which is what I've really focused on, like, in hiring detail mamas to help me run the business.
Well, and it starts the process of that internal evaluation, which I think is what makes it so great. It's never totally accurate. I'm the first to admit that. But what it does is it starts the conversation. And as you get into that, just like we were just doing there now, and I'm going, from that standpoint, I'm a giver mama. But the reality is that was based on those values that I have developed over the years. But I found the same thing, that when I was working with women, a lot of them ended up in the giver, in the S. Yeah, with the test. Yeah. So found that
I work with a lot of giver mamas and some detail mamas too, because I think details are like, wow, you look like you're having a lot of fun. I have fun like that.
I know. Yeah, don't even tell me about it. But so as you look at that, how do you help these women
Mm-hmm.
the challenges that they're facing. Obviously, if they're a giver, they're probably, not always, but I would assume a lot of them are in relationships that they shouldn't be in. They're kind of
Mm-hmm.
codependent, as you mentioned. How do you help them to
Mm-hmm.
either change that relationship to where they're not codependent and they've set some boundaries, or they realize that, you know what, this is not for me, particularly if they're experiencing emotional or physical abuse?
Yes. Which I have worked with as well. And, so here's how I do this because you mentioned Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins is someone that I've been learning from for the past, 5 years or so. And I use a ton of the frameworks that he's taught me. One of the frameworks that like comes to mind when we're talking about, there's so many, but I mean, like, for instance, I don't know if you've heard of the 6 human needs framework, 6 human needs psychology framework, which is that all humans share the 6 human needs. And so I'll use things like that, or I also talk about patterns. So patterns are a big thing, like see the pattern. This isn't you, it's a pattern. Where did that
Right.
pattern come from? Right. Which is how I can usually help someone who's in a codependent or an unhealthy kind of relationship dynamic really start to understand, like, wow, that got kind of messed up. I don't know if you've ever read that book, What Happened to You. It's written by a
Haven't.
psychiatrist and with Oprah Winfrey, basically going back and forth. But it's a really easy way to understand the physiology of trauma. And so I often kind of go back to those principles as well, because inherently, when someone's in like an abusive relationship, and they're still hanging out, it's because it's still meeting one of their human needs. And even
Yeah.
though you look at them and be like, why do you stay there? It's because it's certainty for them. They know that they can gain certainty from this. And we all have a need for certainty. So I acknowledge that. Like, I have a need for certainty too. I get why you would want to be certain. Like, you're certain it's going to be uncomfy, but you are certain of that, versus stepping away from that is massive uncertainty and feels really destabilizing. So you start to talk about patterns, you start to put it into frameworks. It creates a lot of space. So it's less about something's wrong with me. And this is a pattern that I've, either picked up, learned from in childhood, etc.
So as you're working with moms, I know one of the things you talk about is how do you help a mom and how does it help her children if you help her not to be a particular way with
Oh,
with
okay.
herself and with her kids? Yeah, I think you
So let's say, for
refer to it as a
instance,
super mom. Yeah.
oh my gosh, yeah, the super mom. So not the super mom. Definitely. I was like, I'm going to fail at the super mom and my kids are going to be stronger for it. Um, for sure, because you raise independent kids and you are there to support them, and then they thank you for it too, which is what happened this morning right before I jumped on. It's like, but as a super mom aside, you asked about like the ripple effect. This is how the
Yeah.
ripple effect works. Okay. So I'm thinking about one woman, she's now that I've worked with for, a few years now, at least. And she's now in her 60s. So she has adult children who also have children. That means she's a grandma now.
Yeah.
And in one of the marriages of her children, there's been infidelity. And that felt like a rug just got pulled underneath this grandma. Like, she was not expecting that. That was, and also she's helping that child navigate through that. Like, what does that mean? Right. And so again, I pulled out the 6 human needs framework, which is we all share the same 6 human needs. The need for certainty, comfort, and pleasure. The need, if we have too much of that, we get bored. So we also have the need for variety. We have the need for significance, which is to be seen and heard and needed. We have the need for love and connection, unconditional acceptance, belonging. We have the need for growing mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and then giving or contribution. And so I just went back again to the principles that we've already learned before with her. And I said, think about these two individuals where infidelity happened. What are their top 2 needs? So we did that again. Are they meeting them inside the marriage or are they meeting them outside the marriage? And it was plain as day, they were meeting them outside the marriage. Right.
Yeah.
And so when you put it into a framework like that, it all becomes kind of neutral. and instead of thinking like I'm a bad mom because this happened for my child and now what's going to happen to these grandkids, right? Instead, you really shift it. And by the end of that, she said, maybe this is the most beautiful thing that has ever happened for their marriage. And maybe they have the potential to actually grow closer through this and teach these, to their children. Yeah.
So as you talk about, it's the best thing for your kids not to be a super mom. And obviously you're working with women who still may have some children, but a lot of times they don't. And yet, how many young women who are now moms, in their late 20s, their 30s, that need to understand how their behavior and how their personal transformation and all of that can affect their children in a way that it gives their children a much better chance of independence and making good decisions.
Yeah. As I always said, I've never read a parenting book. I've just continued to work on myself, and the more I work on myself, because everything's a mirror and all relationships,
Right.
are mirrors, then parenting has become easier. Parenting has become more in flow. Parenting has really taught, I see all of it as such a great opportunity versus an incredible responsibility.
So
Yeah.
as you look at, are most of the women that you're working with single, or are they still married, or is it even?
It's a mix,
It's a
and
mix.
some of them have never been married,
Uh-huh.
some of them are married and divorced, some of them are married and want to be divorced, some of them are married and happily married.
Okay. So
Uh,
do you try to help those women who are not happy to redevelop that relationship before divorce, or do you find that in many cases is at a point where they need to understand that they can get divorced and still be happy?
yeah, I think it's really the primary message that I always give to them is not about the timing of when this gets to happen. The primary message is about loving yourself, like how you've got to, because they're never going to leave or stay and shift the marriage if they don't first love themselves.
How do they do that? How do you help someone? I mean, think about it. I mean, we've all grown up, most of us anyway, have grown up with these imprints that I'm not good enough, or,
Mhm.
if you're highly religious, I was born in sin, so I'm sinful.
Yeah.
All of these type of things. How do you help them to learn to love themselves to the point where all of a sudden it's like, okay, I really do love myself. And when I do, all of a sudden you're setting boundaries that are appropriate.
Again, I kind of go back to the same thing. I always point back to myself and I say, listen, we all have the same fears. We all have the fear that we're not enough. And because we're not enough, we're not lovable. I also learned that from Tony Robbins, and once you say that, it's like, oh my gosh, because women look at me and they think I'm confident, they think I have it all together, that I don't feel like I'm not enough. I'm like, what are you talking
Don't
about?
you? Don't you?
I I every day I work on, just owning my self-worth, owning my deservingness, And so the way that I help them do that is to mirror back to them that everybody feels that way. You're not strange or different. It's a fundamental flaw of being quote unquote human, that somehow you're just not enough. And because you're not enough, you're not lovable. So let's just put that on the table and let's move on. Okay, sister, because that's just is what it is. And also, Doug, it's also about marrying back to them what they are. Again, through that quiz, the personality quiz.
Yeah.
It's like you have amazing gifts. And that's the thing, if it's a giver mama and she's in a codependent, whether it's with her child or whatever this mush is, if it's at
Yeah.
work or, with her partner. That's why I love group coaching, because I don't only do one-on-one coaching, I do group coaching. And group coaching is divine because the other women start marrying. You've got a mix of women in there, some with some visionary, some with some inspirational, other givers, and other details, right? So you get this dynamic of like, wow, love you so much. And also, sister, pull your bootstraps up. Let's go. Set some boundaries. This is not okay. This is where you end. This is where they begin. You know what I mean? And so having that sometimes in the group setting, the medicine, the soulful medicine is just being heard in a safe place, just owning and like saying like, wow, I feel like this. And that alone is the medicine and can feel like can bring back self-love. Because when you see another woman feel the same way, you're like, oh, okay, guess I can love myself even though I feel this way sometimes.
Well, and I look at that like you're just kind of taking their hand and walking with them. And I think for people
Yeah.
to understand, to find a really good coach or mentor, it's someone who will take your hand and walk with you because they've been
Mm.
through it. And as you say, if you get into a group, you're all joining hands together and helping each other. And I love that.
Yeah.
Well, we're done. It's like meditation for me. Time goes by
Aw,
so
so
fast.
fast.
It's amazing. So, a couple of final questions. Number one, if you
Mhm.
had a final message for the folks, what would that be?
In difficult situation, when you don't know what to do, ask yourself what love would do. What would love do? And why I say that is because our natural love state is a loving state. And that's why it feels so dang awful when we're resentful or bitter or angry or pissed off or, it's like it's because we're disconnected from the part of us that is loving. So by asking yourself a better question, you'll get a better strategy and a better solution. So ask yourself, what would love do? And then allow yourself to hear the answer. Because sometimes love would forgive. Sometimes love would set a hard ass boundary. This is not okay anymore. Sometimes, love would bend. Love would be like, okay, I see, I need to flow. I need to flex a little here. Right. So there's a lot of different answers that can come from that. But I find that that is the most centering, grounding, really like, how do I move forward is what would love do?
Perfect. How do people find you? How do the women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s find you?
Come find me at drsuemccreadie.com, which is drsuemccreadie.com.
Wonderful.
Thank
Sue,
you, Dr. Doug.
thank you. This has been wonderful. We could go
So
on.
fun.
I
We could
guarantee
go
if
on
I
for a
wasn't
long time.
limited to time, we could go on for another hour.
So fun. Thank you for all the work you're doing and all the giving you're doing, giver mama, Dr. Doug.
I appreciate it very much. Thank
I
you.
love that.
At least
Thank
fortunately,
you.
I'm not in a codependent relationship, so that's good. Anyway, folks, thanks for listening. And Sue, thanks for being on the show. Folks,
Thank
have a
you.
wonderful week. Join us again soon. This is Dr. Doug saying namaste.